Hello and welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess, the consultress, here bringing you amazing, innovative conversations from the front lines of entrepreneurship and living in today's age of disruption. I have the pleasure and the privilege of having awesome conversations with people who are on their growth edge, doing uncommon things because we live in this age where everything is reinventing itself, and therefore we get the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. So I want to introduce you to this wonderful lady who has come highly recommended by people who've been in my network for a decade. And we had the opportunity to meet not too long ago, and we're fast friends and immediate kindred souls. So Liz Schehl, welcome to Rise and Shine.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. It's a thrill. I'm excited.
We were in pre-production, bouncing away to Rusted Root, Send Me On My Way, and
Yes.
talking
Brings
a
me
little
back to
bit.
high school concerts.
And I feel
Back
like
to the
music is
future.
like that love language that people get to kind of vibe and connect on. So I usually start all of my green room stuff with some music. And we talked about my jewelry here, which happened to be what I was wearing this year when we went to the Path of Totality, my family and I, for the solar eclipse,
Yeah.
and how we were downriver from the actual falls, right? From the actual event of like the mayhem that happens to the water, and gaining speed, falling down, and then continuing down rapid, class 6 rapids till the whirlpool, which is where we set up camp to watch the celestial event.
Yeah.
The whirlpool to me signified like the recollection and the recoming together of energies after kind
Mhm.
of a chaotic journey, right? So
Yeah.
Liz, you were like, wow, I can relate.
It kind of felt like my life, right? I mean, the whole career that I've had to where I got today just felt like there was tons of energy, activity, and sometimes chaos, right? And it all came together and it culminated and it's swirling. And the swirling part of it right now for me is so exciting because it's not swirling through discord. Instead, I feel like it's organized chaos and opportunity. It's all of these things, this knowledge, this experience, it's all swirling around and coming together. And I feel like it's starting to make a lot more sense. And all I see is just this collection of experience and knowledge, and all the things that I've been wanting to do are now coming to fruition. So I can't wait to like shoot it back downstream and just
Yeah.
let it explode.
Yeah, right on.
Right?
And there's always analogy in nature for us to like
Yes.
be connected with, well, I wonder how this shows up in my life. And
Mhm.
so I want to know a little bit more. When you said like it all felt like very like full of energy, like full steam ahead, and then in making a change, sometimes
Yeah.
it can feel very chaotic. So bring us in a little bit deeper when you are making this transition, where from and where to?
Yeah, great question. So, a little bit of background. So, I spent over 20 years in the financial services industry, started as a financial advisor, and had a really some amazing opportunities at some fantastic companies throughout my career where I learned a lot, I grew a lot. And what was interesting is I call them little nudges. And from the time I started, there just were kind of these little nudges that would pop up and tell me, I don't know, is this really the right thing to be doing? And I share that because when I was a financial advisor, the first nudge I got was I realized I got more energy and excitement around coaching other advisors. So I
Mm.
became a mentor. But I kept going on in the career, right? And then I ended up taking a role in the home office. And when I did that, I was working with advisors on training and development. I was a mentor. And that aspect of my career continued to stay with me. And so what I found is that my real passion wasn't necessarily what I thought it was when I started, which I intended it was going to be to make as much money as I could. It was the prestige of this career as an advisor, which I absolutely love. And I love the industry. But for me, my real passion and purpose was about helping other people think differently, see things from a different perspective, and realize their unlimited potential. And most of the time, we get so ingrained in the day to day, we just can't see it ourselves. So what I found was in corporate America, I was able to do some of that to a point. But part of the challenge was, and it was interesting because that you had mentioned this in some of our conversations, this aspect of feeling restless or feeling like there was something else. I felt like there was more to address. And a lot of the training and the work that we had done was focused primarily on business development, strategic planning, all of that, all very important. But I also realized there was this other piece missing, which was around the purpose, around the mindset, really the human side of the business that's just often ignored. And so for me, being able to tap into that a little bit more and have a little more flexibility and creativity and freedom to explore some different ways to pursue that, that's really where I felt like it's come together. So I left corporate America a couple of years ago. I decided to do consulting. And so I work with a lot of teams in the wealth management business and leaders in the wealth management business, as well as some others outside the industry. But overall, it's just been really exciting to, one, have a little more creativity, flexibility, and freedom in what we talk about, and addressing some of what I believe are some of the more important components around human behavior, mindset, resilience, all of those things that allow us to continue to thrive. And I love that aspect of thinking differently.
Oof, gosh. I'm like, rewind. Can we just grab that last little piece? Like, it's the human element that allows us to feel more alive, feel more connected, feel more engaged and on purpose. Like,
Yes.
I know I've said this before and I'll say it again, relationships run the world. And sometimes when we find ourselves in a discipline, like I am also a recovering financial advisor, that's where I started my career. So I feel you, but it can feel very pragmatic, almost to the point of suffocation, where you feel as though you are living somebody else's diagram and you're producing in a way that is just almost feel very mechanical, very industrial age, right? And that industrial age is kind of what is slowly or very loudly dying right now in these moments of history that we're in. And what's coming next, and Alvin Toffler talks about this in his book, The Third Wave, is the most highly technological and highly humane society that humankind has ever seen. So, of course, what most of us are doing right now, and I love that your innovation is coming in the financial services arena, because like if you were to say the top 3 most stodgy careers to be stuck in, it would be like banking, financial services, and like insurance maybe, but it's all like it all points to right there. It's like what we're innovating, what you're innovating right now is a way to harvest the humane pieces and kind of flip over the paradigm and make it a lot more accessible, a lot more connected. And honestly, like that's why we connected the first time that we spoke, because we're like kindred souls in that way. I had to leave the industry because I didn't feel, while I felt it was important, I didn't feel called to it. And that restlessness feeling of like, there's something more for me and I don't know what it is, but I don't think I find it here. And oftentimes when people find themselves in that position, 2 things happen. They either blame themselves and start playing the I'm not good enough game, or they get mad. And this must not be for me. I must have to rebel. And, so I'd love to hear a little bit about like your decision to make a change. And then, a little bit about what it is that you're developing now.
Yeah. So for the decision to make a change, I think for me, I've always been a curious person. I love asking questions. And some of my first roles in the home office, I was nicknamed the Queen of Questions, and which sometimes works well in corporate America, sometimes it doesn't. And I share that because if not asked in the right way, which is something you learn and evolve, especially when you first go into corporate, it can be seen as a threat or an accusation or something like that, right? But I was just curious because I wanted to see how all the pieces fit together. And what I found was that, as I was going through, like some of that also has stayed with me, that semblance of curiosity. And I just had a really hard time tempering that. And I did for a long time. So to your point, I was one of those people that for a while said, well, I've got to just stay in my lane. There's a defined path. I've got to move up, up, up. There's certain things you have to check the box in order to move forward. And it was interesting because I talk about this. There's different types of goals that you set for yourself. There's goals that are ego driven and there's goals that are more soul driven. Ego driven are typically the ones that someone else helps define your success. And that's how I defined my success for a really, really long time. But what I found is it's completely exhausting because you have no control over the outcomes and you have no control over whether or not they mean anything to you. Right. So that's where the purpose and value comes in. So the big piece for me was finally having this aha moment that I kept, and the funny thing is every time I got that restlessness or that feeling, I changed a job. I moved to a new city. I've relocated like 6 times across the country. I went from north of Boston to Phoenix to St. Louis to Connecticut to Atlanta, and now I'm in Hilton Head. So I've been all over the country, and every time I said, "Oh, this is a fresh start. It's a new thing. It's a new idea." And I found that I just kept doing the same thing over and over again. And at one point, I just got so exhausted and drained. I said, I have got to do something different. Actually, started affecting my health physically. And that was really one of the big catalysts for me starting to ask myself some really, really tough questions. And they were questions that I knew I should have been asking, but I was afraid to answer because I knew it was not going to be an easy decision. But what was interesting is once I finally made this commitment to say, I know something needs to change and I need to finally bet on myself, right? I've got to take this chance on myself. I've got to embrace this curiosity. I need to give myself freedom and flexibility to be creative. And that was something that was missing for me. And I have the utmost respect for all of the roles in the industry that I have been working with and still continue to work with. It just for me didn't feed my soul or the passions that I felt that I could bring forth and help others be more successful with. And so when I finally made that decision, I'd say one of the things that was really valuable to move in that direction was to take time to decompress. So I actually took about 2 months and did nothing but think. And that was really important to digest and try to uncover who I was again. Because what's interesting is in this journey, you sort of get to this point where, you create a persona, and the
Oh,
persona,
yes.
right? And this
Yes.
persona was something that I think I made a pretty good persona, right? It worked
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me.
sure.
But
We all know.
internally,
I just want to pinch
yeah,
out just for a quick second. You asked yourself really tough questions that something niggling in the back of your mind knew you should have been asking all along.
yep, those are the nudges.
Yeah. So everybody that's here listening, like sometimes we hide from ourselves
Mm-hmm.
the very thing that we know we need to do. And I just want to honor you, Liz, for taking the courage, taking
Thank you.
heart and having courage to be able to lean in and say, you know what? I have to be honest with myself. It might hurt to see the things that have held me back or that I have pushed off into the future. But in the rearview mirror, once you do that, you look at it and go, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to give you a big high five for that. I mean, that takes a lot of guts. And so please do continue. I know you were on a riff here about, in the middle of
No,
that.
I'm glad you pointed that out though, because it is so important. And I will share with you too that for a long time, I refused to look at it because I had defined this successful path, right? I mapped it out and I committed to it. And I'm a very driven, competitive person. So I said, I'm going to make this thing succeed regardless, right? I had the grit and determination to move it forward. What I uncovered early on, but wouldn't recognize, is that I didn't have the passion for that path, right? And that was the thing that I had to admit. And as I went through it, I did all the schooling, I did all the training, I, again, excelled and went forward. But it was admitting that just because that I had to deviate from the path that I was on. And it didn't mean I was failing. It mean the outcome just had to shift, right? The path just shifted in a different direction because I finally connected with something that wasn't something I felt I should do or had to do, but because I wanted to. And that was the scariest moment before I took that leap. And I had and it was all driven by fear of things that were realistic, right? Especially as entrepreneurs, there's all kinds of fears. There's fear of failure. There's fear of benefits. And that was like, what about money and benefits? Money and benefits is all you ever hear about. Those are things you can figure out, right? Those are tangible. You can figure those out. The hardest part is up here and here is, does it feed your passion? Does it feed your soul? And is it something that you feel like you can make a difference, that you can get behind? And the hardest part was the fear of making the decision and commitment. And what I found was once I finally said yes to myself, I will tell you, I have never felt so light and excited and rejuvenated when I finally said, you know what, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to take this chance on me. I'm going to go out and work on this business and I'm going to have fun doing it. And I totally shifted my mindset. And what was interesting was I had more uncertainty then than I ever did throughout my entire career. But I had more confidence and more certainty and assuredness personally than I ever had as well. So for me, and getting to that journey, I mean, that was really one of the most impactful things. And I would say it's still a journey. I'm still learning. There's still moments when I say, well, what if, right? That's why I do my what if posts, like to ask questions. But it's one of those things where there's always going to be a what if. And I guess the thing is we can't be so attached to certain outcomes that we're not willing to see other possibilities along the way. And at the time, that was my biggest mistake. I was so rooted on this one path to success. I ignored and kind of tampered down all these other things that could have been something I explored. So in any event, that's kind of where it ended up.
I love you just use the word explored, because if you are able to see your life's progression as an exploration, it
Yes.
does relieve some of this pressure that our ego or our intellect puts on us. You know,
Mhm.
how many of us have been in kindergarten and someone says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you have a picture of a doctor, a lawyer, maybe, a
Yeah, yeah.
nurse, and like a vet. Like these are the only things we think there are out there. So we begin our journey with this concept that we have to know what we want and then go on that decision, period. There's no nuances, there's no thought process around evolving and exploring. The
Mhm.
narrative typically around human progression is decide and go. And it creates a lot of pressure and also undue strain on the individual because
Yeah.
listen, your first 8 jobs out of any type of education realm should all be like, I want to try this out. Like
Mhm.
none of it should be like, this
Yeah.
is what I want to be when I grow up, because it is all an exploration. It took me, I talk a lot about my attitude problem as, I was in banking and wealth management. I was in finance. I was in, my family business. I saw real estate very young. And I got into the world of money very soon after my collegiate experience and my upbringing in scholastics. And I had this myth that like this was who I was now. But the truth of the matter is I was trying it all on. And as soon as I hit a barrier where I felt like I couldn't grow or I was no longer interested or I felt like I was grinding it out, I had to make a choice. There was no way for me to
Yeah.
continue to suffer. And the shame that I felt of continually moving or continually quitting, you know how like that identity of like, well, you must be a quitter. you know
Yes, yes,
that
yeah.
identity piece that you mentioned before, it is so powerful because we tell ourselves who we are before we have the opportunity to discover it for ourselves.
Mhm.
And so leaning into that discovery and leaning into that exploration, I think is kind of the thing that helps all of us to figure out what our purpose really actually is. And
I love
so,
that, yeah.
where are you now pivoting towards, given where you've been and this, huge identity shift and this acknowledgement of passion over assumption? Where
Mhm.
are you headed now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like I mentioned before, one of the things that I find most, empowering and just rewarding is working still with a lot of the teams and the leaders that I've been working with throughout my career. But I get to do it from a different perspective, as I mentioned, right? From that human side. And it's interesting because, especially since COVID, I found a lot of people have fallen out of love with their business and their career. And even if it was something that they had passion around and they still have some passion around, it's just something has triggered where they're thinking like, gosh, everything has changed. And what I've kind of unpacked from that is the world keeps evolving, expectations keep evolving. We have got to become more adaptable. And the challenge has been we continue to operate in the same way we always have. And so the adaptability piece is something that is extremely important to uncover and unpack in some of these conversations because it's getting in the way of people's passions and and how they run their business and how effective that becomes. And I'll just a quick example. I mean, even just talk about the matter of convenience, right? Convenience is something that people expect now, but how do you translate that into, say, a wealth management practice? Or into any other business that you work with, right? We have Amazon where we expect things, I don't know, if not within 2 days, next day, same day, hours, right? Grocery deliveries. I even have a feeder that I don't even have to feed my cat anymore, right? It's on autopilot. Like everything we do is on autopilot. There's nothing that we have to really do or think for ourselves. So when we look at all of these different changes and evolution with what's happening out there, it's trying to help people see the bigger picture of, let's look more strategically at the industry and what our expectations are and how we have to run our business as leaders. And we're not just, the role of leadership has changed. And that's something that I really feel very passionately about, because we have to be leaders of ourselves so that we can tune into things like our passion and make sure that we're connected and doing the right work and focusing on our business the right way. We have to be leaders of our business. We have to be leaders of our clients. We have to be leaders of our team. And the most interesting part about all of this is there aren't really a lot of training or classes for leadership in the true sense, right? It might tell you, here's how you have a good team conversation. It might tell you, like, here's what's really important to know about compensation or doing a review. But connecting with others and understanding where an industry is going or where we have to take our business and do strategic planning and strategic goal setting, all of these things aren't really taught in the traditional curriculum. And that's one of the biggest connection points to getting back some of the passion, because you're connecting back to the why. Because even something as simple as finding out what is the right goal. Okay. I had a team I was working with, and they just threw a number out there. It's like, well, why? Well, I want to beat so-and-so. I want to be number one. I want to do this. And eventually when you ask why enough, right, you get down to, well, because I want to have additional access to resources for my clients. I want to help my team thrive. And when you don't have that connection point, and you're only thinking things from a linear perspective, you lose the total perspective on where you need to go. And so for me, my direction and passion is I want to help people think about things a little differently. I love asking the question, what if? I love asking the question, why? Those are my two favorite questions, because you can't answer them with a yes or no. Right? You have to explain them, and you have to put some feeling and thought and emotion into them. So with what's next is I would love to reach as many people as possible to help them unpack those two things and fall back in love with their business and get really excited about all of the opportunities and be able to see and realize them going forward. So the more people I can touch in that space, that's where my passion lies.
Sign me up. If you're watching this and you didn't just think sign me up, maybe watch it again. Just saying.
That's everyone, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're all waking up to right now. And we are agents of change in our business, specifically speaking, so that we can create the value between what used to be and what is yet to become is the process of emerging. Like you had said, I love how you said, we're evolving. There's new assumptions, there's new questions to ask. So if we continue to exist and to behave the way that we always have, we're not going to harvest or harness the power in the gaps that are being created real time, in the evolution that people are desiring right now. It's part of the reason why I have these conversations very regularly, is that we no longer are operating in an assumption state. Everything is up for negotiation. The fact that everything is accelerating and being disrupted more and more frequently, it creates more and more opportunities to sink into like what you're really here for. And if you're in business, that's what we get paid for. The value between creating a solution between where people are and where they want to go based on the journey we've traveled, the experiences we've had, and the thing that we can see that everybody else is, still exploring and kicking around to see if they maybe can uncover it for themselves. But leaders like you and leaders like me are necessary to be able to help people see themselves in a way that is evolved and progressive and more solid is the word that I see, but more, I guess, at home in themselves. So whether that journey is you as an entrepreneur or you as a changing professional going from a corporate job like you did, Liz, into the world of the exciting, passionate, unknown value creation, which we all get to call entrepreneurship now, if these are the transitions you're thinking about, like my transition is, going from that world of captive into freedom, using real estate as a vehicle, using business principles and structures as a vehicle. And so being able to sit into your passion and discover what's next because there are people around you can affect. We're very much going from that place of like consumption culture into who can I connect with? Because as the world becomes more automated and our cat feeders are feeding our pets,
Yes.
what is it that we're now freed to do? And it's to connect. Relationships run the world. So Liz, I want to thank you for being here with us, because this conversation has been amazing, and it will not be our last, and it might not be very long before you come back to this forum to give us an update on where you are
Yes, I would
in
love
the future.
to.
So we'd love to know where to find you so that we can stay connected. Where can people go to learn more or to be connected with you?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn, so you can find me again under Liz Schehl, and then I also am on Instagram as well.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for spending your valuable time here. It's the only resource we do not get back, ladies and gents. So I have been fulfilled. My cup is full, and I am leaving this conversation better than I entered. So Liz, thanks a million for being here. This has been an amazing conversation, and I hope everyone else here has had just as much fun as I have being here with you. The last thing I do want to say for everybody, we broadcast every single Monday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. So if this is your first Rise and Shine that you're seeing, welcome. Go back in the catalog, because there's almost a year of episodes now waiting for you to discover how you personally can transform because of some of the amazing things that people are doing right here, right now on this planet that are not perhaps Googleable, and for sure are not on mainstream media. So tune in with us every single Monday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, right here on the Consultress YouTube channel. Thanks a million for spending your time with me. Don't forget to
Thank
like,
you.
subscribe, and now share it. Share this episode with someone who needs this information, and let's build a movement of being more powerful, more confident, and creating that value that the world needs to see next. See you all soon. Bye, Liz.
Bye. Thank you.